So remember the story of 2008 and 2012. It's all part of that story. It actually starts when I'm at Goldman Sachs. The Asian crisis happened in 97, 98. That was a crisis of debt, where all of these Asian economies had borrowed too much money and blew up. George Soros wrote a book about it called The Crisis of Global Capitalism. And he said, listen, this debt bubble is likely to transfer itself to the developed world. And he was right, and that there would be a crisis. That got me attuned to it, and I realized that the world was massively in debt, never been this far in debt. 2000 boom bust comes along. The debt crisis didn't blow up because they started cutting interest rates. Then we go to 2008, and we've transferred the bubble from equities now into property. And that brings down the world's financial system. And the central banks discover a new trick, which is we're going to print money. But also over 2008, we discovered some other things, like nobody knows who owns what in this very leveraged financial system. You know, somebody in Lehman Brothers, nobody knew who owned all of these bonds and stuff. So I realized there was a problem with ownership, there was a problem with leverage, and the system was still not fixed. And then the debt bubble blew further. And I knew that by the time we got to the European bubble, it was now affecting major developed governments, Spain, Italy, France. And I thought, we need to find a way out, because the governments are going to keep putting sticking plasters on it, printing money, debasing currency, and finding a way of not letting this deflate. And we know that the more you blow up a balloon, the more likely it is to implode. So I thought I need to do something about this. So I started researching building the world's safest bank, which is a slightly hubristic thing to do, but I thought I'd give it a go. And I went around the world trying to set up this bank, and it's hard. And I gave up. And a friend of mine tapped me on the shoulder and said, you looked at Bitcoin. This was 2012. He said, I think it's the answer you're looking for. So I looked at it, saw it very quickly. Blockchain allows people to store all of these assets and know who owns it. That solves most of the financial system's problem. It's also a better way, faster way of settling and everything else. And Bitcoin itself had this kind of limited supply that maybe it could be a store of value. So I wrote the first paper on it that was a macro paper saying, listen, if you compare it to gold, with gold at $1,300, Bitcoin should be worth about $1 million. And I published that, and kind of a lot of people went, wow, we've never seen a macro research piece, because at the time it was like a geeky tech thing. I then bought it myself back in 2013, and it went up 100% in a month, and I sold it. I'm like, financial markets don't do this. Options might occasionally, but something's weird about this. It's a bubble, or I don't understand it. So then I left it again, and then I rebought it, and then I held it all the way to 2017. It went from $200 to $2,000. I sold it. I thought I was a hero. It went to $20,000 3 months later. I felt like an idiot. But I was out, but I was very interested in the space, and then watched the whole development of the space grow. And I knew that the next recession, this force of debt and central banks and all of these open questions were going to get exposed all over again. So I became quite well known in March 2020, saying, okay, this is the time to go all in on crypto, because the only answer here is for the banks and governments to spend massive amounts of money. And it was likely to drive the value of crypto up, and people would understand the value of blockchain and what this could mean in terms of crypto assets. And so I've got heavily involved then, and have had 100% of my net worth, of my liquid net worth, in this space ever since. I mean, and when you open that first door, you usually come in a bit cynical, but inquisitive. And then you walk into this new room and you go, wow. And then you think, hey, I've got it. I understand it now. You go, well, what's that door over there? You open it and go, oh my God, what's that? And before you know it, it's a maze, because you'll discover it's the biggest thing you've ever seen. So to explain this to people, the internet grew at 63% a year in terms of number of users from 1990 to 2000. In 1997, there were 150 million users of the internet. And as I said, it was growing at 63% a year, the fastest growth of any technology the world had ever seen. We all know that. We all talk about the internet. So here we are today in cryptocurrencies. They've also been around about 10 years. Currently, there's 150 million users, but the network is growing at 113% a year. So it's twice the speed of growth of the fastest technology the world has ever seen. We've never seen anything like this. And what this is the network of money. And it's exploding in size. It's a $2 trillion asset class currently as of today. If we look at the other major asset classes around the world, equities, bonds, real estate, they kind of range between 150 and 350 trillion US dollars. So this digital assets, if we just follow that adoption curve that we're looking at, they will get to a $200 trillion asset class, which is, we'll have never seen this happen by 2030. We'll have never seen an asset class that didn't exist come out of nowhere and be worth $200 trillion. So to think of it, what does it mean? Why should anybody care watching this? This is an entire asset class that's going up 100-fold by the end of this decade. It's like one of the easiest ways to make money and prosper is to have a wave behind you, the wind in your sails. This is the biggest wind in your sails you'll ever have. And so many people are being cynical fighting it. And if you just turn and don't face the wind, put it in your back, you can sprint. And that's the opportunity here. If I said to you, Sydney Harbour real estate's going to go up 100x, and I could pretty much show you how and why, and it was going to happen by 2030. You just do everything you could to buy as much property as you possibly could, or build it, or start real estate agents, anything. When people tell you about cryptocurrency, people are like, well, I'm not sure about that. The government's going to ban it, or whatever it is, because people fear change. And this is a gigantic change, but it's really exciting.
Raoul, tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you? And also tell us a little about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I'm an Englishman living in the middle of a small island in the Caribbean, a salty rock in the middle of nowhere. I got here I was 10 years working for some of the biggest investment banks in the world in the UK in London. I ended up at Goldman Sachs, where I ran their hedge fund sales business, started it and ran the hedge fund sales business in equities and equity derivatives. I then ran a global hedge fund, a macro hedge fund, investing in all asset classes across the world. And then opted out of the rat race, moved to the Mediterranean coast of Spain in 2004 and started writing macroeconomic research and investment strategy for the world's biggest hedge funds, family offices, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds. And in that journey, I was there in 2008 when the financial crisis came, and I saw it coming, and I wrote about it, and we actually all profited from it. And that felt wrong, because people come to me and say, well, why don't we know about it? And I thought, yeah, this is not right. Then the European crisis came along in 2012, where we almost lost all of the European banks and the euro itself. Same thing happened. I kind of forecasted it was going to happen, what was going on. And friends of my parents come up to me and said, why didn't anybody tell us? Because people lost their life savings in both of these things. And at that point, I realized I wanted to do something about it, and cut forward a couple of years, and I started a media business called Real Vision. And my job as CEO and co-founder of that is to democratize the world's very best financial information, to give the average person access to exactly the same information that the world's most successful and elite hedge fund managers and money managers have. So that's really what I'm doing now. I run that. I still run my research service, and I'm also deep down the rabbit hole of crypto.